Hi. Well, actually, it is late on Sunday, and I am putting this together for you. I actually put it together over the last couple of days, but just am now getting to blogging it. And apologize for the hat and also for the sunburned face. My son and I this morning ran a half marathon, and I'm a little sunburned. And if I take my hat off, I have a bad case of hat hair. So I'll just leave it on at this point and continue on. And we have an interesting piece today, don't we? We kind of step out and just jump over to Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, as you'll find it in the Bible, and do the entire thing. And you may have a lot of questions. Most people do when it comes to this book of the Bible. Questions like, did Solomon actually write this? Why is it included in the scriptures? What are we supposed to do with it? A lot of interesting comments and questions regarding it, and it is rather unique. Usually we think of in the Bible an author being inspired by God to write it, and while this is true also of the song, it's got a little different process to it because it's like a collection of love songs and poems, all centered around love. And it was collected over hundreds of years, perhaps most of the Old Testament history of Israel, and consolidated, and as it was used in wedding celebrations over time, it became more concise, and finally, estimates put it at somewhere around 550 BC, give or take 100 years in the exile as to when it was finally edited and put together. Again, we don't know the name of the scribe, as is pretty typical in the Old Testament, who actually wrote it and finally assembled it as is. But nonetheless, some would attribute at least parts of it to Solomon, which would be around 950 BC. It could extend literally for hundreds of years, depending on which parts, which pieces were inserted and taken out. And so it really has been around a long time, and it took hundreds of years to get to the point where it was finally put together. And basically, what we have were those pieces that were ultimately used at celebrations. And so we get this wonderful story, love story, and told in a very literal fashion and a very realistic fashion. And there's some great value in it. And so as we look at it, hopefully we'll understand that. Now, in your Bible, I hope that each section of this is delineated for you in terms of the characters. First, we have the beloved, which is the woman. We also have the lover, which is the man. And then we have the friends, or called daughters of Jerusalem, who were friends of the beloved. And in this, then, we have this series of 6 poems or songs, all put together, used at wedding celebrations and at other times, as a way to focus on the idea of love, the anticipation of it, the consummation of it, and the aftermath of love. And so we have that theme running throughout. Now, I will say one other thing. I had heard previously from commentators that it was intended to be allegorical and intended to refer to the theme of love from God to His church. And while we certainly can draw from it, and once we read it, we can say, that's a fantastic love. And that is the kind of love that we could ascribe to God through Christ and the church. And so we might do that. However, another commentator I read said you really have to be wanting to force that, because the writing itself really is meant to be explored and understood in just the real literal fashion as it's written, not in terms of some deeper theological meaning, though we can learn much from it. There were down through the centuries questions about whether it should be included in the canon. Jewish scholars, even around Jesus' time, argued back and forth, some saying absolutely and some saying no. Some of it's ascribed to Solomon, and that may have given it some pull, although basically his name appears, and that's what we know for sure. And in reality, you won't find a reference to this book in the New Testament anywhere. Now again, we'll trust God in this, and there's certainly some things that are wonderful for us to enjoy in this reading, and we'll just let it be at that, and not worry about the rest. What's special about this is as you read it, if you read it through those 8 chapters in terms of these 6 poems or songs, they all fit together from start to finish, and they play themselves out in this relationship between this woman and this man. And in it, going back and forth, and obviously much of it is poetic, you get not only a very literal, many times very erotic, very right out there for everyone to read, but nonetheless you get this beautiful picture, and from it what we can see is from God's perspective, and maybe this is why it's included, what goes into true love and what makes this love, this marriage, special. And there are several things that I'll just bring to you today that I think as I was reading through different scholars suggest we can draw from this. Number one, in this case, if you read these back and forth, you find out love is mutual. It has to be 2 people freely giving themselves to each other. It can't be coerced. It can't be forced. And so within that, you have part of that relationship, in that love, in that marriage, is the sexual nature of that relationship. And we learn that we get a better feel, and very much agreeing with Martin Luther, centuries and centuries later, that sex was actually a good thing. God deigned it for couples in marriage to be used for enjoyment, for a intimate commitment and covenant with one another, and also for procreation. So number one, love is mutual. Number 2, love is exclusive. It was not premarital sex or extramarital sex that's being talked about here. It is the sex between 2 people who love each other in marriage. And you can look at chapter 4, verse 12, chapter 5, through chapter 5, verse 1, chapter 4, verse 4, chapter 7, verse 5, chapter 2, verse 16. You get the idea. On and on throughout, you get this picture of these 2 in this committed relationship to one another. Also, so love is mutual, love is exclusive. We also understand that love is total. It is love to a person, to everything about them. It's not to physical appearance, it's not to a brain, it's not to money, not to someone's occupation, someone's bank account, the security that maybe someone can provide. It certainly can be elements of all of those, but love is meant to be total between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, and it's the whole package. Because as we know, there are times when that whole package doesn't show itself, but nonetheless, love is always there, totally. And then the last thing I would say is love is beautiful. As you read this, if you read it with this poetic sense, and you do have the characters laid out so that you can see who's saying what. I had never read it that way before, but as I read it, it made much more sense to me, and it also kind of helped give it much more of a wonderful flavor and beautiful flavor as you read through it. So those are some things that I drew from it, and I would say if your Bible does not have that as part of the text so that you can see who's saying what, I would certainly look online. You can certainly find that. Look in many Bibles. Most of them do have it. So and read it that way. But again, so it's a man and a woman in a relationship, committed relationship with each other, and it's exclusive, it's for life, it's total, and it's beautiful. And then the other thing is, if you pull back and we say that's what love is, then we take that and we show and we point to, in the Gospel of John, for instance, the love that God has for his people, such that Jesus as the groom and the church as the bride, and the expression of this love. Marriage and love have been a part of God's plan from the beginning in Genesis. You'll also find it late in Revelation. You'll find marriage spoken about, I believe it's in Revelation 19. So marriage was always and is always been being a part of God's plan. And so with that, read it, enjoy it, and don't be embarrassed by it. It's meant to be give you the emotions and the feeling that goes with this love, the anticipation of what will happen, and then the actual consummation of the relationship, and finally the love that continues to exist beyond. And so that's what it's all about. And with that, I'll leave you to enjoy it, and we'll talk to you again soon.